Putting it all together, a pattern emerges, one that is not confined to a single story, culture, or moment in time, but repeats across every layer of existence. Source, order, understanding, humanity, knowledge, consequence, collapse, renewal, bridge, transformation. At first, this sequence can appear linear, as if reality moves from beginning to end, from origin to conclusion. But it does not. It loops, it repeats, it returns. This is the fundamental realization of the system. Reality does not move in a straight line. It moves in cycles. What begins in chaos does not remain there. It becomes structured. That structure becomes visible. That visibility leads to awareness. Awareness leads to knowledge. Knowledge produces consequence. Consequence builds tension. Tension leads to collapse. Collapse clears the system. Renewal begins again. The bridge reconnects what was separated. Transformation integrates the entire process. And then quietly, almost imperceptibly, the cycle starts again. Not in the same form, but with the same structure. This is why cycles can be difficult to recognize. They do not repeat identically. They evolve. They appear in different contexts, with different characters under different conditions. But beneath those differences, the same sequence unfolds, the same stages, the same transitions, the same movement from potential to structure, from structure to awareness, from awareness to disruption, from disruption to reset, and from reset to renewal. This is not limited to mythology. It can be seen in the rise and fall of civilizations, the growth and collapse of systems, the patterns of individual behavior, the cycles of learning, failure, and transformation. A person begins in uncertainty, chaos. They adopt structure, rules, habits, beliefs. They begin to understand those structures. They act within them. They gain knowledge. They experience consequences. They reach a breaking point. They reset. They rebuild. They change. And then, eventually, they find themselves at the beginning again, facing a new form of the same cycle. This is not repetition in the sense of stagnation. It is repetition in the sense of refinement. Each cycle carries forward what came before it, not always consciously, but structurally. Patterns learned in one cycle influence the next. Mistakes made in one stage shape behavior in another. Awareness gained in transformation affects how the next cycle begins. This creates something important: depth. The cycle is not a flat loop, it is more like a spiral. It returns to familiar points, but not at the same level. Each pass introduces the possibility of greater awareness, more refined understanding, and more deliberate action. But this is not guaranteed, because cycles can also repeat without awareness. The same patterns can play out again and again if they are not recognized. The same consequences can arise from the same actions. The same collapses can follow the same imbalances. This is what creates the sense of being stuck within a cycle. Not because the system traps the individual, but because the pattern has not been seen clearly enough to change. This is where transformation becomes critical, because transformation is the stage that introduces awareness of the cycle itself. Without it, the cycle continues unconsciously. With it, the cycle becomes something that can be engaged with intentionally. This is the difference between being carried through reality and moving through it with awareness. The cycle does not disappear, it cannot be escaped. Chaos will always exist as potential. Order will always structure reality. Knowledge will always introduce consequence. Collapse will always follow imbalance. These are not optional stages. They are structural. But how they are experienced, how they unfold within an individual or a system, can change. That is where awareness matters. Because once the cycle is seen, it becomes something more than a sequence of events. It becomes a map, a framework, a way of understanding where you are, what has led to that position, and what may come next. This does not provide control in the absolute sense. It does not eliminate uncertainty, but it introduces orientation, the ability to recognize patterns as they emerge, to identify when a system is moving toward imbalance, to see when collapse is approaching, not as failure, but as transition, and to understand that renewal will follow. This is the deeper meaning of the cycle of reality. Not that everything repeats endlessly without change, but that change itself follows a pattern that can be observed, understood, and over time, engaged with more consciously. The cycle does not end, it continues. But once it is recognized, it is no longer invisible, and that recognition changes everything.